Hello and welcome to... Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where it's our 3rd-year anniversary! And as is tradition, we're going to take another look at the Clone Saga. Sort of. Yeah, I'm kind of cheating on this one. Today's comic isn't really another step in the Clone Saga's story. None of the events of it have any impact on the larger narrative of the Clone Saga itself. It's kind of a mini-series that ran through 5 super specials released in 1995. Then why am I counting it as part of the Clone Saga reviews? Mostly because it was written and released during the Clone Saga and features Ben Reilly in it, so it might as well be a Clone Saga story. Chronologically speaking, this takes place right before Maximum Clonage, so there's nothing that I need to catch you up to date on, at least in terms of the Clone Saga itself. Today we're looking at Planet of the Symbiotes, where we see the true origins of my favorite Spidey villain, Venom. I've been wanting to give my thoughts on the symbiotes for a while now, mostly because I still see plenty of people who don't like the storyline Maximum Carnage. Fair enough, different opinions and all that, but sometimes I'll see opinions about Venom and Carnage themselves being terrible villains, which I particularly disagree with. Plenty of ideas that seem terrible can be made to work in the hands of good writers. For those who don't know the origins of these characters, allow me to explain. In the mid-'80s, Marvel held one of its first big crossover events, Secret Wars. It's an entertaining romp with some great moments and epic plot, but the largest lasting change from it was the introduction of a black costume for Spidey, later revealed to be an alien symbiote that was taking his body for a joyride while he slept. Peter got rid of the suit, which then bonded with journalist Eddie Brock. Brock, pissed at Spider-Man because he had unwittingly gotten him fired, merged with the symbiote and became Venom, dedicating himself to destroying Spider-Man as revenge. Venom himself wasn't a bad idea, and when he came around he showed why it worked. Someone who had all the details of Peter Parker at his fingertips and totally hated him. It's a level of menace and fear that makes for thrilling stories. He had most of Spidey's powers, but was stronger than him. He didn't set off Peter's spider sense, and he knew all the ways to get at him on a personal level. So what if the costume itself is an alien? Venom, to me, is the perfect nemesis for Spider-Man, maybe even a little better than the Green Goblin, and I know that might seem like blasphemy, but it's how I feel. The problem that arose with Venom was writers who didn't get him. With popularity comes a desire by people to see them more and see them in different lights, so many tried to make him into an anti-hero. While Venom may have his own twisted sense of ethics, I felt it was also better if he was focused on Spider-Man rather than trying to make him some sort of a good guy. Also, some writers were just flat out weird with how they wrote him, suddenly making him into a monster by wanting to eat brains? The hell? Carnage, a spawn of Venom's costume, is more one-note than Venom. He has all the abilities of the symbiote costume, but not the intelligence and knowledge Venom possessed. Cletus Cassidy, the host for the Carnage symbiote, is just an insane psycho killer, who was also clearly inspired visually by the Joker. However, I felt Carnage represented a different sort of challenge for Spidey that did work. While Venom could represent a villain's single-minded goal of destroying Spider-Man, Carnage was taking the raw power of the symbiote suit and using it on everyday people, believing that murder is the ultimate expression of free will, true and utter anarchy in every sense of the word. He doesn't have a plan, he doesn't have an end goal, he just wants to kill and destroy. And thus, this kind of killer, almost animalistic brutality, allows writers to explore how far Peter will go before he compromises his own ethics, which is what they did in Maximum Carnage, pushing him to the limits of how far he should go to stop people like Carnage. The symbiotes are great for those 2 roles, but almost every other time they tried to create other symbiote characters, they failed miserably. The other Venom spawn were all basically one-note bad guys who had some interesting visual appeal, but no personality. Toxin, Carnage's spawn who became a hero, was just okay, and while it's an interesting idea of a guy having to fight the symbiote's more psychotic urges, it's just kind of to me. But with the popularity of the symbiotes in the mid-90s, it was decided to do another event around them during the Clone Saga, this time showing us even more symbiotes than ever before. So let's dig into Planet of the Symbiotes and see why this story is a failure of global proportions. One's from a trade of the Clone Saga, so no covers. But even if I wasn't, we're going to be speeding through 5 comics today, so we don't have a lot of time for covers anyway. Part 1 begins in Amazing Spider-Man Super Special number 1. We open with Spidey fighting Neo-Luddites who all have matching uniforms, mass-produced gear, and laser weapons. Even Spidey has to laugh at the complete hypocrisy. You say your Neo-Luddites want to eliminate technology, but you do with stolen laser rifles? The devil's arms serve well against the devil's work. Luddites in the 90s who reject technology and then subsequently use the most advanced forms of technology to commit terrorist acts. This is like a rejected Monty Python sketch. Besides, destroying that Klystron wave modulator is worth any compromise. It compacts energy waves, multiplying the strength of any attached power source by 10. And of course, because this is a fictional comic book universe, such a revolutionary device is never seen or mentioned again in future stories. Technology already blights the environment. This advance could increase the deterioration tenfold. Maybe it's not a good idea to base your environmental terrorist philosophy off of the air zone solution. They drop the device on Spidey, who can't get away in time, so instead kicks the thing through the high roof. Can't tumble away in time, but with the proportionate strength of a spider, I don't have to. Apparently spiders are good soccer players. Who knew? Meanwhile, Eddie Brock stands on a rooftop and talks to a symbiote, wondering if, due to a then-recent miniseries, he's actually doing harm by being Venom. He wonders if, perhaps, the symbiote is responsible for making him more violent, but that gets interrupted by seeing Spidey playing Kick the Can with the major advance in technology. As Spidey continues fighting the Neo-Luddites, Venom swings in, drooling Ecto-Cooler. That was another thing that the writers started doing with Venom, and attacking them too. He webs one of the Luddites up and prepares to kill him, but then stops himself as he tries to figure out why he thought about killing him. However, Spidey is further distracted by the Neo-Luddites somehow turning the machine on, which shoots out a bright light. Venom and the Neo-Luddites escape in the confusion, and Spidey hears sirens in the distance, deciding to web up the remaining terrorists and swing away. He overheard the Neo-Luddites mention the word Spurzle, thinking that he's heard it before, but can't place it. And according to a Google search, Spurzle is a brand name for guitar tuning pegs. I guess those Neo-Luddites love to rock out. He also wonders about Venom's hesitation and hopes it's a chance to finally put Venom out of business. Then we cut to Peter with Mary Jane, where he then proceeds to say the exact same thing. Oh, how we do love padding. Spidey heads to the headquarters of the Fantastic Four, where the Thing is letting him do some research on Venom. Why he would need to research Venom is head-scratching since, as we are reminded in the next 2 pages, he already knows about Venom! But yeah, 2 pages recapping the origin of the black costume. Well, that didn't teach me anything new, but it did solidify my focus. Well, that didn't teach us anything new, but it did waste 2 pages that could have been used for something better. He finds a reference to Spurzle, and the Thing explains that Anton Spurzle is a cybernetics engineer that Reed Richards used to consult with. Spidey remembers now that he heard about him back in school, and remembers that Spurzle is giving a demonstration that day. What do you say, Ben? Feel like a little clobbering time?
Hey, does Clinton like cheeseburgers?
No, that's just him talking about warlords.
See, right now, we're sending food to Somalia, but it's not getting to the people who need it because it's being intercepted by warlords.
I appreciate your help, Ben. Those Luddites were pretty fanatical. And stupid. Don't forget stupid. We cut to an auditorium where Spurzle is hyping up his latest invention. What I'm about to show you, my fellow scientists, is the next step in virtual reality. Now say it with me. We are VR. By wearing this helmet, an operator can see through sensors attached to the Mark 7 diagnostic drone behind me. He or she will be able to maneuver that vehicle by thought alone into the most hazardous of environments.
So it's nothing like virtual reality.
Not to mention, piloting it by thought is, well, lame. What happens if the person panics? At least with handheld controls, someone can take over quickly, or just instinctual hand movements can help steady themselves. Toxic wastes, nuclear meltdown, even an active volcano. Okay, forget about the thought control crap. It doesn't matter what kind of remote control it has. The problem is having the drone survive hazardous environments. Radiation and lava aren't exactly kind on electronics, if you get my drift. There's a lot more comics to go through, so let's sum up the rest of this one. The Neo-Luddites show up to try to kill Spurzle, but fortunately Spider-Man and the Thing show up to knock them around. The Luddites gain control of the remote-controlled craft, but Venom also arrives to stop them too. Spidey takes his chance to strike a nerve at Venom, asking him if the symbiote is insane and controlling his actions. Venom hesitates and in the confusion leaves, allowing Spidey and the Thing the chance to stop the Luddites completely. Afterwards, Eddie tells the symbiote to leave him completely so he can make a decision about what he wants. And then we get really silly. The symbiote slinks off into the night and we get narration about it.
Now, more than ever, it is alien, truly alone, rejected by all it's cared for, by those it had sought only to serve. It pulls sorrow from its core, a hurt that embodies all that is lonely and forlorn, and pours that pain into a silent shriek, a psychic wail that reaches to the very stars above.
How could this happen to me? I made my mistakes, got nowhere to run.
Yes, that's right. The symbiote feels sad, so it's screaming. And apparently it's a psychic scream that affects people all over the city, making people feel melancholy and angsty. However, the other thing that the cry of the emo does is summon an alien vessel that teleports into a forest, revealing symbiote-like faces in the dark, ending Part 1. All in all, though, Part 1 wasn't too bad. An ominous ending, with some silliness. The Neo-Luddites were stupid, but they were just a means to an end of getting the story along. Now, the individual issues of the Super Specials also contained other stories, but since they're unrelated to Planet of the Symbiotes, we're gonna skip them. Next up is Adjectiveless Spider-Man Super Special number 1. We open on Long Island, where there's a sign for a Science Expo. I love how in fictional stories, science is just that generalized a thing that one can have a convention around it without going into a specific field.
Seriously, Betty, you know what this meteor could mean to science? It could mean actual advances in the field of science.
A guy who looks not unlike a more grown-up 90s kid comes walking in as if he's possessed, which in fact he is, as a symbiote flows out of him and murders a security guard. We then cut to Manhattan, where a poorly drawn Peter Parker is playing with Reed Richards' sonic gun, a weapon he's used before against the symbiotes, particularly in Maximum Carnage. Mary Jane's lopsided face asks Peter why he has to go look for Venom. We've been over this 1,000 times. I brought Venom's alien symbiote to Earth. What it does, I'm partly responsible for. And hey, could you stop posing? I'm serious here. I can't. I'm a woman in a comic book. I'm always posing. Peter provides exposition that since the last issue, there have been several high-tech thefts that, based on reports, sounds like they were done by Venom. Mary Jane proceeds to act like an idiot. Well, if you have to go, better put this on. Don't want to see my husband on the new news in his jammies. Yeah, you start to realize a little why some people wanted these two divorced or split up if you're writing her as if she's a moron. Peter might want his Spider-Man costume? No kidding! At a nearby hospital, we see that Cletus Cassidy is in a coma thanks to events in another miniseries, and we saw the same thing very briefly in the previous issue. The doctor hits a panic alarm because he's convinced he saw Cassidy move, but the guards don't take him seriously, believing he's still in a coma. I certainly believe him, though. In the previous issue, he was in a coma with his eyes closed, but in this one, his eyes are open.
Great continuity!
At one of the tech crime scenes, the Scarlet Spider shows up next to Spider-Man, saying he decided to look into the technology thefts too. And it seems everybody's coming out tonight to look into it, since across the poorly drawn room is a human-sized ventilation system that's kicked open by Eddie Brock. Eddie has also cut off his mullet since the previous issue and shaved it into some kind of flat, pointy hairdo. Eddie says he doesn't want the symbiote doing any damage, so he came to look into it. Spidey decides to give him the sonic gun because sometimes Peter is kind of stupid like that. Even the Scarlet Spider pulls him aside to tell him what a moron idea that is, though Peter does have a somewhat good explanation, that the sonic beam isn't dangerous to humans and that the gesture might help gain Eddie's trust to keep him from rebonding with the symbiote. And on the other hand, he might hesitate or decide to destroy the weapon if he feels a compulsion to rejoin the symbiote and you lose your best weapon against it. The Scarlet Spider suddenly exclaims that they've got to get to Manhattan before the symbiote steals the Klystron wave modulator, that super special energy device from the first part. He says he just has a hunch about it, and fortunately this is not bad writing, just clumsy foreshadowing. They head to the lab and see the symbiote carrying around tech. Using the sonic gun, they repel the symbiote from its host, who begs them for help. After the battle, Eddie's eyebrows grow 3 times their normal size, and he points out that his symbiote would never join an unwilling host, meaning something's wrong. The symbiote got away with the wave modulator, and Scarlet Spider has another hunch that they should head north. Ben's a clone. Could he be forming a new power? Something psychic? And if so, could it be dangerous? His ability to see what happens later on in the script could be catastrophic! The whole city could go up in flames! We have a brief interlude of Mary Jane worrying about Peter. One of the issues writers and fans had with the marriage of Mary Jane and Peter Parker is that a lot of the time, the writers just kept writing the same scene with her. She's worried and mopey about Peter's safety. As such, it felt like she had no purpose in the story. I would argue that the writers were lazy and didn't try to find something more useful to do with her, like they would any supporting cast member. Also, a suggestion from a story perspective. If you think her scenes are pointless, then just stop cutting back to her! If you're just gonna keep showing her worried, it is pointless to the story. Just keep the flow going and don't interrupt the plot to remind us she exists. It's not like we ever cut to J. Jonah Jameson in this story, reminding us that he hates Spider-Man. Anyway, the 3 arrive in the North Woods and discover a group of symbiotes working on some kind of giant device, installing the wave modulator into it to boost its power. And then Eddie Brock has a seizure.
Can you tell me what emotion I'm conveying with this face?
They realize that the symbiote responsible for the tech thefts wasn't the Venom symbiote, making them wonder where it is. Oh, and naturally, they have no shock or horror about seeing a dozen or so symbiotes doing this. Now, if I were there, I'd maybe be terrified to see all these things considering what we know of the symbiotes, but no, this is just another day in the park for them. A fight ensues, and this really gets to the core of why this comic fails. The idea of hundreds, maybe even thousands of symbiotes being let loose on the city is a pretty horrifying thought. Think John Carpenter's The Thing meets the Puppet Masters. Alien shape-shifting organisms that consume you and use your body to do what they want. But this isn't a horror story, it's action schlock at best. The symbiotes aren't any different than goons with some special powers. They all have the same goofy grin as Venom, but lack the menace that made Venom so terrifying, namely his knowledge of Spider-Man. So they're not a direct nemesis with wisdom about how to hurt the hero. They're not being used as a secret invasion that could instill paranoia by creatures that are virtually undetectable. They're just there. Oh, and it turns out that the Venom symbiote was disguised as the Scarlet Spider's hoodie, partially bonding with him without his knowledge, and that's why he kept having those hunches. Kind of a letdown of a reveal, and that also means that Spidey's line from earlier about the dangerous new powers of the Scarlet Spider was completely pointless. Good move, writers. Long story short, the device gets activated and the three are teleported away, ending part 2. We continue in the Venom Super Special number 1.
An endless instant ago.
Stop! An endless instant? Okay, go ahead. Anyway, they're teleported to the titular planet of the Symbiotes, which looks a lot better since it's not being drawn by someone who can't draw faces. They can't draw other things, but still. The Symbiotes now resemble H.R. Geiger's aliens, which I'm sure was intentional. The Symbiotes swarm them, and they tell Eddie to use the sonic gun, but he's paralyzed with fear. However, he snaps out of it quickly and starts repelling the attackers. By the way, with the green shirt and short hair and huge gun, Eddie Brock now resembles the Doom Marine.
Rip and tear! Rip and tear your guts! Oh crap, you things don't have guts! That can't be good!
We get some instances of bad 90s artwork here, like Eddie's impossible spine, but let's move on. The symbiotes back off, which, according to Spidey, is because they're probably not used to resistance or pain. That is extremely stupid and lazy. But anyway, they hijack a floating car and fly off, looking for a place to gather their thoughts and figure out a plan. After another pointless cutback to the truly psychotic-looking Mary Jane, we see that Spider-Man and his amazing friends have found refuge in a spot that doesn't resemble parts of the female anatomy whatsoever. They try to get information from the symbiote, but it refuses to fully bond to the Scarlet Spider. Nuts, I was afraid of this. Eddie, you're going to have to become Venom. Another brilliant idea from our fearless hero. You finally get Venom to reject the symbiote, so now just let it bond with him again. Nothing can go wrong with that plan. Hey, here's a dumb idea, Petey. Why don't you bond with it? You were its first host, after all, and in previous comics it has shown a desire to return to you. No, just let Eddie have at it again. You're the king of good ideas, Pete. Anyway, it becomes Venom again, and after doing some bodybuilding poses, it explains its backstory. The symbiotes are a race of conquerors that are addicted to the strong emotions of host creatures, particularly adrenaline rushes. The Venom symbiote wanted to more permanently join with a host instead, to belong rather than dominate, and as a result was considered an outcast in symbiote society. Oh, the symbiote just wanted to be loved! That's why it hijacked Peter Parker's body and used it without his permission to go web-swinging around while he slept and then tried to force itself on him when Peter rejected it, and constantly tries to make people commit violent acts. The symbiote was imprisoned to later be vaporized, but that prison was then transported to Battleworld during the Secret Wars, where it then joined with Peter. It latched onto Ben Reilly because of his similarity to Peter, and it saved them by dragging them into the teleporter, which they happily refer to as a Stargate, and it's probably no coincidence that this book came out a year after the original movie. They build the Stargates because they completely use up their hosts and leave them desiccated corpses. They usually send out scout ships to find new planets to invade, and when they heard the Venom symbiote's emo cry, it homed them in on Earth. However, they're too far away for radio contact, so stole local technology to build the Stargate. Yes, the symbiotes are so advanced that they have interstellar travel and warp gate technology, but their telephone technology is still lagging far, far behind. Or maybe they just didn't want to use up their minutes if it turned out to be a wild goose chase. I don't know. Back on Earth, even though less than a day has passed, Cletus Cassidy has been transported to a high-security government installation. There, they hook him up to machines that will allow him to talk through brainwaves because... science? I don't know why the hell they'd want to talk to a deranged psychopath in a coma, but whatever. Back on planet Symbiote, or rather planet Parasite, given what we know about them, they decide the Stargate is their best chance of getting back to Earth, and then they can use technobabble to destroy the Stargate on the planet so they can't go through. And what stops the symbiotes from building another one? They were able to MacGyver one up on Earth using tech there, so I imagine the alien planet's gotta have better stuff than us. Eddie's trusting the symbiote again, so yeah, good call there, Pete. After some padding, they arrive back at the unguarded Stargate because the symbiotes are evidently morons that sent everybody out looking for them. One of them has to stay behind to destroy the gate, and at first the Scarlet Spider elects to do so because he's just a clone, but that's rejected because he's suddenly colored black by mistake. No, actually, Venom decides to stay since the gate is symbiote technology. Spidey says he doesn't like it, but just goes ahead with it because this entire story could actually be retitled Spider-Man is a Dick to Venom. However, it turns out that it was the three of them who were morons and not the symbiotes, who were all lying in wait using their camouflage abilities. After a fight scene, they go through the gate, but their technobabble failed and the symbiotes all come charging through. Part 4 is in Spectacular Spider-Man Super Special Awesome number 1, whose cover I'll comment on briefly. It shows the population of New York in symbiote form, but they're all different colors, which is one thing that irritates me about this book. Admittedly, there's no reason to believe that the symbiotes aren't all supposed to be black, but it just makes for a visually uninteresting villain force if they're all just black goo with vaguely Venom-esque faces. The Venom-spawned symbiotes may not have been the most interesting characters, but at least they visually looked different from one another to give us something nice to look at as opposed to...
glorious black and slightly less black.
The situation on Earth has deteriorated rapidly as the symbiotes have already begun spreading across the globe. A news report exposits about heroes like Black Bolt and the Human Torch that have had success in fending off symbiotes, but others like Captain America have had less luck.
Damn, if only these symbiotes were asthma-based, then I could easily defeat them!
Yet another scene of Mary Jane worrying, and then cut to Spidey being chased by people possessed by symbiotes, all of whom, naturally, still have their hair and clothes, because, you know, there's nothing more frightening than a symbiote wearing plaid or a symbiote with a mullet. And hey, that's what people look like when covered by a symbiote, right? I mean, just look at Venom here. He's actually nude and bald under that thing. Anyway, the three escape the symbiotes and try to figure out where to get some weapons to fight off the invaders. At the installation housing Carnage, a symbiote takes over one of the guards, promising him to let him run the installation when the symbiotes are in charge. Oh, and naturally, this guy's mustache remains despite the costume enveloping him. Man, just imagine how much scarier Venom would be if he grew a big, bushy mustache. It then stabs Carnage, who's out of his coma or something, whatever. But Carnage's symbiote actually mutated his blood previously, so that spilling it allows him to become what he is. However, it does even more than that, since he absorbs the other symbiote into his own. Spider-Man, Scarlet Spider, and Venom head to a local mall to pick up weapons because, you know, flamethrowers are usually widely available at shopping malls. Venom goes off to monologue to himself about how this is all his fault for sending away his symbiote, and its cry summoned the symbiotes here. I was worried that the violence we generate as Venom was more your influence than my choice, and your race is obviously a savage one. On the other hand, violence seems the only way to stop the horrors being suffered by so many innocents. And in that light, can it truly be wrong? Is it wrong to use violence to stop the evil, sadistic, inhuman goo that wishes to enslave us and then use us up like a dirty towel?
These are deep questions.
Seriously, was that your big introspective moment? Maximum Carnage asked whether killing is truly the only solution to murderers like Cletus Cassidy. That's actually a philosophical debate. Asking whether it's wrong to use violence to stop an invading alien force is just dumb. Peter heads to a Radio Shack to try to use a cell phone to call Mary Jane, but the battery's dead. How much do you want to bet this whole thing was just meant as a cell phone ad?
Sprint battery dead while alien symbiotes try to take over the world? Try Verizon.
Another pointless Mary Jane scene, and we're off to the Scarlet Spider. The symbiotes are conquering the world, so what does he decide to do? He goes to a clothing store to get a new hoodie, because he feels naked without his whole costume, he says, and uses a Sharpie to draw a perfect new spider on it. I see now why people didn't want him to turn out to be the real Spidey. Anyway, after the 10-20 minutes he spent on something so important as a new logo, he goes to another store to grab propane torches and heads back to meet the others, who didn't get any weapons themselves. It's amazing that despite the fact that the Scarlet Spider wasted more time than any of the three, he was still the most successful. The symbiotes arrive at the mall and attack. Spidey hits on the idea to turn the mall's sound system into a weapon, turning on "Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head," then putting a microphone up to the speaker to cause feedback. The symbiotes are repelled and they withdraw to figure out a new plan. Their idea? They'll turn the Stargate on reverse, then use Venom's emo cry again, amplified, and cause the symbiotes pain so they'll want to leave.
This is starting to sound like a bad comic book plot.
This is an amazingly lazy and dumb plan. 1. How did they know that the emo cry was causing normal people angst? 2. Why would a cry for help cause other symbiotes enough pain to want to retreat? 3. It'd just be easier for them to kill Venom, something even the Scarlet Spider points out, than to force a massive retreat for millions of symbiotes back through one tiny little gate. But whatever, let's speed this along towards its dumb conclusion. They head back to the Stargate, and like a video game, the two need to keep the symbiotes off of Venom while he works. However, it turns out to all be for nothing, as the Stargate on the other side has been deactivated, meaning the entire symbiote invasion force is on Earth, and there's no way to send them back. However, the issue ends with the arrival of Carnage, who has been snacking on so many symbiotes that he has become a giant. Planet of the Symbiotes concludes in Web of Spider-Man Super Special Extreme Maxi Ultra Supreme Awesome Bodacious Special number 1. After seeing Carnage absorb the symbiotes, our heroes make a run for it and head back to Mary Jane, who's listening to the radio broadcast asking if anybody is out there, as the streets are still engaged in heavy fighting. Also, she's not wearing any pants because an alien invasion is the best time to be skimpy. Then again, maybe she was just in the middle of changing clothes, since she's changed her outfit about 4 times over the course of 1, maybe 2 days. The three arrive at the apartment, and Mary Jane puts on some pants and a Hootie and the Blowfish shirt. Appropriate, since the symbiotes and humanity come from 2 different worlds, and the symbiotes only want to be with you. They've come back to take a break and regroup, and we see Venom and the Scarlet Spider on the couch drinking beer. Yeah, the truth of the matter is that TiVo hadn't been invented yet, and they didn't want to miss the Super Bowl. Eddie's sporting another hairstyle and hair color, now orange instead of blonde, and nearly shaven off instead of the pointy thing. Consistent artwork in a multi-part story. Who needs it? Venom thinks the emo cry plan can still work if they amplify the psychic agony that brought them there and give the symbiotes an empathic overload, forcing them into protective comas. He's nuts, but he could be right. Or he could be incredibly stupid. Is this seriously what happens to symbiotes when they get sad? They make all the other symbiotes feel worse?
I feel sad when you're sad. I feel glad when you're glad.
They go to the Our Lady of Sorrows church where Eddie first became Venom, since he'll be the most focused there. Carnage shows up to attack Venom since he realized that the symbiotes were causing chaos, and, well, that's Carnage's thing. The Spider-Men lead him away while Venom begins the biggest karaoke of crawling in my skin ever felt on planet Earth. The Spider-Men manage to hurt Venom, but are overwhelmed by a sea of symbiotes. The psychic cry isn't strong enough, but Eddie realizes that it can be amplified if he merges completely with the Venom symbiote. It's actually a pretty horrific image, so kudos there. Kind of ruined, though, by the pretentious narration talking about how they're together now forever, and they're one being, and blah blah blah. The symbiotes feel the shriek and coalesce into a single being, feeling unimaginable despair and horror until they disintegrate. Peter and Ben go back to the church and scold Venom, since he told them they'd just be put into comas. Venom explains that the only way the symbiotes would truly die is by choice, thus he forced them into committing mass suicide. I gotta say, that's actually pretty clever. I'm serious, that was a great way to end a thread on that level. Mind you, it's completely ruined by the fact that they did it by making Venom feel really, really sad and then yelling really loud. That's where it just doesn't work. Venom escapes and Carnage is recaptured off-panel, and Peter is kind of glum about the whole genocide thing, but Mary Jane tells him that sometimes the ends do justify the means, which Peter agrees with. Completely disregarding the conclusion made by Maximum Carnage, but whatever, who cares? Happy ending, even for Venom. He's happy that he's rediscovered his goal of protecting innocence. And for that reason, we are, and will forever remain, Venom. Until later on, when he decides to get rid of the symbiote, despite him being permanently joined with him, thus letting Scorpion become Venom, and Eddie Brock becomes the stupidly named Anti-Venom. These comics suck. There are good ideas here, I won't deny that. However, the artwork is all over the place, sometimes decent, and other times completely goofy or exemplifying the worst of the 90s. The symbiotes themselves are boring adversaries in this, visually uninteresting and not as scary as something like this should be. This should be horrifying, a comic filled with tension and dread by the overwhelming nature of the crisis, but it barely phases our heroes. There are a bunch of plot holes, and the idea that Venom feeling anguish is enough to kill off an entire race of beings whose goal is to feel emotions is just dumb. Marvel tried this idea of a symbiote invasion again a few years ago with equally disappointing results. The idea is good, but it needs to be put in better hands. In the meantime, though...
Warning. Intruder is present in the living room.
Where's it coming from?
All around us.
Dude, the chain gun is jammed. I can't get it to work. You're right, I can't get a fix on the particle trace. It's all around us. Damn it, why can't I get a fix on this thing? There's no reason why I shouldn't be able to. Alright, let me try to recalibrate this. We cannot let our guards down for a second. We don't know what this thing is capable of. I mean, I don't even know where this is supposed to be. Liz! Dude, are you okay? This is too big for me. I can't do this alone. I need reinforcements. Joe, can you hear me? I need reinforcements. Joe, can you hear me? Apollo Z Hack, are you there? Juario, Mars Girl, Lupa. I'd settle for Dr. Insano. I need help. Isn't there anybody out there? We're the only two left. The only two people left in the entire world. Whoa. Heavy. Yeah, heavy. Heavy. Yeah, dude, major heavy load here, man! Heavy. Heaviest Hey, dude, either one of us could be next, man! Beneath the seas beside the flame. There was so much I wanted to do with my life, like play a CD32X game. He called me and distracted me. Dude, I may never have a chance to meet Rob Liefeld. I'm a fool. I know, dude. I mean, how could you not like Rob Liefeld? I mean, just shut up! I should have seen it before. I'm a complete fool. It was you. Dude, what are you talking about? I didn't want to believe it. After all, you're an idiot. But then again, that's why you're the perfect cover. No one would suspect the innocently moronic 90s kid, would they? Dude, you are not being radical right now. I should have suspected months ago. Not even 90s kid is creepy enough to suggest propping up Kurt Cobain's body on stage. There is something seriously wrong with you. But I didn't see it until now. You were the one who called and distracted me when the ninja-style dancer returned with a warning. You were the only other person here when Harvey disappeared. Poyo vanished after we were all in a room together. And the only other person still left on this planet is you. Why, of all people, of all creatures on this planet, would you be the only other person still here? But then again, you're not really 90s kid, are you? You've been using his image this whole time, hiding in plain sight from Lord Vice. And I think I even know what you are. The clues were all there. Its voice is not its own. You have no voice or image of your own. You need to use others. Your mere presence has been causing little glitches and errors all over the place, particularly in the credits of my videos. The poem gave away the whole story, but I didn't think about it correctly. There are so many ways of bringing you about, and you have so many names. But in the end, it really all comes back down to the one thing to call you. A piece of the world is missing. It doesn't mean it's gone, it's your name!
This game has been very amusing, but I think it's time for it to end.